Thank you, DeAndre. Thanks to everybody who's been able to join for this virtual Congress in your corner. I can't wait to start doing them live again, but this is as good a substitute as we're going to get, and they've been successful so far. Let me start by giving you a sense of where we are, what I've been working on, and then we'll move over to questions. First of all, we have been through a very rough stretch in New Jersey and in the country. Here in our state, we have lost officially now over 8,500 people. The real number, I think, is several thousand higher than that. That's just the number of people who have tested positive and have been confirmed casualties of the coronavirus. But that said, I think we can say with some confidence right now that we are flattening the curve. We are beginning to beat this thing. If you look at the numbers, going back to the middle of April, which is, I think, when it looks like that was the peak of the epidemic in New Jersey. Hospital admissions are down from around 8,000 then to 5,000 now. The number of people in New Jersey on ventilators down from about 1,600 then to about 1,100 now. Folks in intensive and critical care from about 2,000 then to about 1,500 now. At its peak, we were maybe about 100 critical care beds away from breaking the hospital system in New Jersey. That's how close we came. And the reason why we bent that curve and we're now on a good trajectory is, well, first of all, it's because of our heroes, our frontline medical workers, our first responders, all of the people who came together to do these incredibly difficult jobs. But it is also because of all of us. It's because we decided to, at great personal sacrifice, come together and take the advice that we were getting from the public health experts and to practice social distancing. And the sacrifice, I know, has been very great for folks who have lost their jobs, for small business owners who are wondering about the future of their businesses. But the benefit is that we have saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. And with that, I think we've also given our economy a chance to actually survive and rebound. I don't think we could have survived economically if we had not taken the steps that we took. Now, my job, my focus has been to try to make the sacrifice as bearable as possible, particularly the economic sacrifice. We put into place, as everybody I think on this call knows, a number of major federal programs to make that possible, from the stimulus checks that folks have been getting if they qualify, to the PPP, the Small Business Lending Forgivable Loan Program, to our expanded and enhanced unemployment insurance. Now, none of these programs have been perfect in their implementation, to say the least. There have been many frustrations. The Small Business Program, for example, in its first iteration, way too much of the money went to preferred bank customers who got placed in the front of the line. And we have all read infuriating stories about businesses like the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team getting PPP loans, while small mom and pop businesses in our communities were unable to even get somebody from their bank on the phone. Made me extremely angry. And when the money ran out of that program, a lot of us said, we are not renewing it unless we fix it. We haven't done everything we can to fix it, but we did improve it. And the numbers bear that out. We are now in phase 2 of the Small Business Rescue Program. And I can tell you that the average loan size the first time around was over $200,000. This time it's about $79,000, which shows that this money now is going, for the most part, to the truly small businesses. In the first round, New Jersey got about 33,000 of those small business loans. This time around, by May 1st, with only about half the money used up. We were up to 77,000, more than twice the number in the first round. So it was worth trying to make that better, and I'm going to continue to do all I can. On unemployment, the state system basically collapsed under the pressure of all the people who were applying. I think things are getting a little bit better right now. The state has announced that it has begun processing claims for independent contractors and gig workers, folks who didn't qualify before, who we've now made eligible for unemployment insurance. My office has, all of my staff basically have been converted to full-time caseworkers, working with our constituents to make sure that they can actually receive the assistance that they qualify for. Particularly, we've gotten a large number of requests for help with unemployment compensation. And my commitment to you is that anybody who has problems, who contacts us, you will get a live person who will get back to you and will do everything he or she can to help. And so far, we've already dealt with hundreds and hundreds of individual constituents who have come to us for help with these programs. And we haven't resolved every case, but we certainly have been able to resolve some. And my commitment is everybody who is eligible, who qualifies for the promises we have made, those promises must and will be kept, even if it takes more time than we wanted. Now, there's still some things I'm not satisfied about, and I'm working hard on. First on my list is we need to make sure that our state and local governments around the country and in our district can survive this crisis whole. Every single town in Hunterdon County, in my district, in New Jersey, no matter how small, is facing exactly the same fiscal crisis right now because tax revenues are drying up. And we got to make sure that we can still pay our teachers, pay our cops, pay our firefighters and first responders, that all of the people who make town government work can continue to work, not just for those things that we consider life-saving and essential. I want our parks to remain open. I want there to be sports leagues in the summer. I want county fairs to be happening in the fall. All of the things that make our lives joyful and happy. I don't want to say goodbye to those things in the small towns of Hunterdon County. So what I have done is to be a lead sponsor, one of 4 lead sponsors in the House of legislation that will provide flexible assistance to communities across the country with a population under 500,000, particularly focused on our smaller towns and counties. We have 140 co-sponsors in the House. It's bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats from across our district, mayors and county officials. Again, Republicans and Democrats have come together to urge the Congress to pass this bill. And I'm happy to say that the concept will be part of the next coronavirus bill that will be introduced and I believe passed in the House of Representatives. I now have that commitment from our leadership in the House. Now, there's going to be some resistance to that and other things. We've had some issues with Leader McConnell in the Senate, as many of you know. There are other tough issues that we're going to be negotiating on. We got to make sure that we still have a post office in America when all this is done. We have to make sure that the November elections are secure, that people can safely vote, even if there's a resurgence of this epidemic. We got to do something about childcare, especially if people are going to start going back to work, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then for me, the other huge priority is to make sure we get testing ramped up, testing for the coronavirus. We are nowhere near where we need to be able to safely go back to work and school in terms of testing everybody who might want to get a test. We're only testing still largely symptomatic people in the state of New Jersey. We're only doing about 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 tests per day. And every expert says we've got to ramp that up by a factor of 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 before we can say it is absolutely safe for people to go back knowing who is infectious and who is not. The federal government, the Trump administration, I'm afraid, has abdicated responsibility for this and said that it's up to us, it's up to the states. Fortunately, Congress has not abdicated responsibility. We have provided in our last bill $25 billion to help the states do this job. I'm in touch with the governor and his staff every day about this. I push them and I prod them. I think we have to be much more ambitious in the state of New Jersey to get to the point where all of us, not just where the governor can say it's safe, but where all of us can feel that it is safe to go back to work and go back to school, because we want that to happen as soon as possible for the sake of our economy and the sake of our sanity. So that's an overview. I'm sure you have a lot of questions about a lot of those issues and a lot of others that I didn't have time to mention. I look forward to hearing your questions, and I will try to give you straight answers, honest answers, factual answers wherever I can, and to acknowledge uncertainty where we still just don't know what's going to happen. So with that, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Tom. Just to kind of clarify a little bit on the pre-submitted questions, if you did submit a question beforehand, our staff will be following up with you to get you the answers to those questions. We have taken a few of those questions that were asked frequently pre-submitted, and we will ask them to start off with the Congressman now. So Tom, your first question, what are you personally doing to make sure that Congress's response to this crisis is bipartisan and not focused on political gain?
It's a good question. And, you know, there's a lot of partisanship in Washington right now. We all know that. The good news is that every bill that we have passed in response to the coronavirus has been fully bipartisan. From the very first one back in February, when we provided initial money for testing, for development of vaccines, all the way through the CARES Act, which was the biggest bill, actually the biggest bill the Congress has passed in the history of the United States, to the interim bill that we passed a couple of weeks ago to replenish the small business lending program and provide more money for hospitals and for testing. Every single one has been 100% bipartisan. There are some issues that we're debating right now that have split a little bit more along partisan lines, which disappoints me. But as I mentioned, my number one priority, getting relief for our state and local governments. The bill that I've introduced is bipartisan. We made very, very sure, I'm a Democrat, obviously, made very, very sure to get Republican co-sponsors. And as far as our district goes, I've been very, very intent on working with local elected officials of both parties. Last week, 54 of our mayors and county officials, county freeholders, signed a letter to the congressional leadership in support of that state and local government relief, including the bill I introduced. All of the Hunterdon County freeholders were on that letter, in addition to many of our mayors of both parties in Hunterdon County. So I'm going to do my best to keep this as bipartisan as possible, but I also keep my promise to all of you to always tell you what I think and to do what I think is right, especially when lives are at stake.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question, if you are the sole proprietor / non-employer and apply for unemployment, what happens if you also apply for PPP loans as a non-employer?
So my impression is, and we'll get back to you if I'm wrong, my impression is you can't do both. You potentially could qualify for both, but if you've gotten a PPP loan, which is designed to help you maintain your payroll, even if that payroll is just you, then you should not qualify for unemployment insurance for yourself at the same time. and vice versa. That's my understanding. Just as a small business that furloughs workers who then go on unemployment, if it wants to qualify for the fully forgivable PPP loan, it has to bring those workers off of unemployment and pay them a salary.
Thank you, Tom. Just another reminder for everyone on the call, if you would like to ask a question, please just use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please include your name, the town you're from, and also an email or a phone number so we don't get to your question here or there's additional follow-up, our staff can reach out to you. Our next question comes from Judith. Judith, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were going to read it. How will testing roll out in Hunterdon? So far, there's only one test center at Raritan Valley Community College, and that is for people with symptoms and with a doctor's prescription.
Up and running at Raritan Valley Community College. I was involved in that effort and helped get some of the PPP, the face masks for the volunteers there that enabled it to stand up. But you're totally right, it is not enough. We can't just have testing for people who have symptoms and a doctor's prescription. If we want to reopen the economy safely, we've got to have a system that allows everybody to be tested and frankly to be tested regularly. So the next stage of this, I'll tell you theoretically, because it hasn't happened yet, we're working on it, is we have to be able to introduce easier testing methodologies. So for example, Rutgers University has developed a saliva test. It's a lot easier to administer. It's not a swab that's more invasive. It's something that, you could even do it at home yourself, although it's not approved yet for home use. That could be used at the drive-through center, but it could also be used at local pharmacies, at urgent care, at all kinds of facilities across the county once we ramp up the ability to run those tests at labs. So that's one thing. And then we've got to actually get the regulatory approval from the state for pharmacies and other locations to be able to use those kinds of tests. So that's what's got to be done. There's still some supply chain issues because you need the reagents to run the tests. You still need some PPP even for the newer kinds of tests. You need the test kits, you need the lab technicians. And that's what the money that Congress allocated a couple of weeks ago is supposed to help New Jersey pay for. What we are waiting for right now, I'll tell you, is a plan from the governor. That plan is supposed to be submitted to the federal government so that some of the money we provided can be sent to New Jersey, and so that your congressman can then fight for it and advocate for it. And I have been pretty annoying in pushing the governor's office to get that plan out so that we can start working on this and get far beyond that one test site in Hunterdon and Somerset County.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Bob. Bob, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Bob?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead with your question, Bob.
Okay. First of all, Congressman, thank you very much for what you do for New Jersey, for your frankness and your transparency in getting it done.
Thank you, sir.
Millions of Americans are currently out of work. Owners of restaurants, officers of large and small companies have reduced or stopped taking their salaries, for the benefit of their employees and so on and so forth. Insurance companies are giving partial refunds, and various organizations and individual citizens are making a huge difference with donations of all kinds. How can we get Congress to join with these people to show solidarity with us, as well as giving them an incentive to get the major issues, such as PPE for the front lines, as well as the testing that you're talking about, resolved?
Yep.
And to take this one step further, what could be done to withhold the salaries of Congress in the event of another shutdown due to the lack of a budget passing? Because I believe it's disgraceful to stop or reduce benefits for the citizens when the people creating the budget continue to receive their full share.
Yep. I'll take the second part of that first, Bob. I totally agree. If there's a government shutdown, I shouldn't be getting a salary. Congress shouldn't be getting a salary. When I was elected and sworn in, I was sworn in January 2018. It was in the middle of a ridiculous government shutdown. And I volunteered to not take my salary. Fortunately, we got the government reopened. I also supported a bill that would have made that automatic going forward. That if, in the future we can't agree on a budget, hope it doesn't happen again, but if it happens again, then it becomes automatic after a while that the members of Congress who are, after all, responsible for that, for not paying hardworking government employees, also not get paid. So I'm totally with you on that. On Congress in the current crisis, here's the difficulty. The easiest thing for Congress to do, because it's our number one constitutional power and responsibility, is to pay for things. We can provide money. So if there's a need for PPE, for masks, for ventilators, for gloves, if there's a need for test kits, if we want testing to be free for people, Congress has the power to provide the money. But our problem here is not just the lack of money, it's the supply chain difficulties. It's that there isn't enough of this stuff being made in the United States. Too much of it was coming from overseas. We were too dependent on medical supplies from China, for example. And honestly, I think our own government was behind the curve in preparing for this crisis and in ordering the manufacture of supplies that Congress would then pay for to make sure that our heroes in the hospitals would have what they need. So, and that's harder for Congress to effectuate because we're not the executive branch. We don't, we're not at the head of a supply chain able to order companies to make masks or ventilators. That is what the president can do. And we can cajole him, plead with him, press him, conduct oversight. But at the end of the day, it is the president and the governors that then spend that money or not and make things work or not. So all I can tell you is we're going to continue to do our part and accept our share of accountability for the results, but everybody has to do that as well.
Thank you very much. And thank you for what you do for our communities.
Thank you so much, sir, for participating.
Thank you both. Just a reminder for everyone on the call, and just give a little background into the format. Once you submit your question, I will message you back on beneath your question. So just make sure you're watching your chat, and that's how I'll let you know when your question is next, when you're up next, and when we'll get to your question. So just make sure you're following along with that. I'll send you a private message under your question just to let you know when you're actually going. Our next question comes from Eileen. Eileen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Congressman. We certainly appreciate these opportunities to speak directly with you. So thank you. I'm concerned that other states are not doing their part to prevent the spread of the virus like New Jersey has done. Social distancing and thoughtful evaluation before reopening parks and businesses. Is there any action at the federal level to ensure that people living in states like New Jersey are protected?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
I
Uh,
know.
well, it's a good one, and I share your concern. You know, I said that we're flattening the curve in New Jersey, and actually, it's true in New York. It's true in the northeastern states in general, where we have taken pretty extreme measures that we're all living through right now. And I quoted some of those hopeful statistics on hospitalizations and people on ventilators. If you look at the country as a whole and you subtract New Jersey and New York, things are getting worse, not better. And we see some other states, I think foolishly, relaxing social distancing at moments when their rate of infection is still going up. So what does that mean for us? Do we start putting up borders between our state and others? I still feel like we can't go there because I think it's so important that through this terrible crisis, we maintain our sense of unity as Americans. We maintain our sense that we are one people, one country, that we help each other, that we have a duty to one another. And sometimes I may be angry that people in other states and their senators in particular don't seem to have that attitude towards us, but I don't want us to descend to that level. I don't see how we get through this if we don't maintain that sense of solidarity. Now, you know, there are states, you know, that, I mean, including ours, that have rules that if you're coming in from out of state, you've got to quarantine for 2 weeks. There are some sensible things that we can continue to do if we are concerned about people bringing this in from parts of the country where the leaders have not been quite as responsible. In the meantime, we can set them a good example by showing what a successful effort to control the spread of coronavirus looks like. And I think some of those states will be under a lot of pressure from their people to do the right thing.
Thank you. That's a very unifying answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from Laura. Laura, can you hear us?
I can now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So hold on, which question am I asking? I asked 3.
Whichever you want.
Oh, okay. So at what point does Trump's complete, thank you for taking this, and I'm in Union Township. So at what point does Trump's complete dereliction of duty with regard to the pandemic result in his dismissal? November is a long way off and tens of thousands of lives are at stake.
Well, we did have a very serious and difficult debate in both the House and the Senate late last year about the president's fitness, and the result was what you saw. And I took my stand then. I think at this point, we are in the middle of a national crisis, and for better or worse, we are going to face this epidemic with the president that we have, and with the governor that we have, and with the Congress that we have. And all of us had just better pull together and work as hard as we possibly can to save lives right now. We are just a few months away from an election that's going to determine the leadership of this country going forward. And I'm confident that people will be evaluating all of us in public office at that point and deciding how well or poorly we have done. I just, all I can say is that the quality that I am looking for in a leader right now is not liberal conservative, it's not Republican Democrat, it's, are you willing to take responsibility and do your duty to people before serving yourself?
Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from Chris. Chris from Flemington. Can you hear us? There you go. You're unmuted now. Can you hear us?
Yes, Congressman, thank you very much for doing this. Greatly appreciated. Two questions related. I know every life is important. I know you feel that way. New Jersey is currently at 6.4% fatality rate against those tested positive. What percentage of fatality will be used as a threshold of unavoidable acceptance to allow New Jersey to start opening up and moving forward? And then with that, going along with something you raised, New Jersey's only tested 3% of its population. Is there a target percentage that we need to be able to get to have confidence that we actually know what the exposure rate is in New Jersey? I'm 67. I'm in that risk category. Yeah. I'm very concerned about the testing. Thank you.
So it's easier for me to answer the second part of your question. I hesitate to even try to answer the first. I think we all agree that human life is precious. We all understand that there's no policy that can protect human life under any and all circumstances, but it is precious to us. And we know that had nothing been done to control this horrible disease, the number of people who, I mean, we've already lost over 70,000 Americans. That number would be significantly higher if not for the social distancing. So we're talking about very large numbers. I think when I look at the metrics, what we need in New Jersey, I do look at things like the percentage of the population that's being tested. There are public health experts who are debating this and giving us kind of a range. Some people are more conservative. Some people are, they want much more testing. Some people are a little bit more on the permissive side. But I'll tell you that right now we are testing about 2% of our population in New Jersey a month. I think that's got to go up to at least 8% per month. Right now we are testing 5, 7, 8,000 New Jerseyans a day. I think that's got to more than double. That's probably got to triple or quadruple at the very least. And I'll give you another metric that I think is very interesting and very objective, and that is the positivity rate, the percentage of people tested who test positive for coronavirus. If that positivity rate is very high, that means you're testing mostly people who are symptomatic, as we are now, people who've got a fever, people who then have a doctor's prescription. If the positivity rate is very low, then that means, okay, now we're testing a large number of people who aren't necessarily showing symptoms, but who want to know, am I clear to go to work? Am I clear to go to school? Logically, if you're doing that, the number of people testing positive will be much smaller. Right now, our positivity rate in New Jersey is in the mid-30s. And that's the highest in America. So it's a sign we're not testing nearly enough people. The World Health Organization's experts have suggested that it should be at around 10% if you want to safely reopen your economy. And again, I'm not like the world's greatest public health expert, but I listen to them, and that's roughly what they say. Some might say it should be 5%, some might say 15 is okay, but in that range. So that's where we need to get to. The good news is we can do it because we've got brilliant people working on this. The tests, the methodology is getting easier and easier. Production of the necessary supplies is ramping up finally. So we can do this in a relatively short period of time if we make it our #1 priority.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question comes from Joe. Joe, can you hear us? Joe, can you hear us? Okay, we'll come back to Joe. Our next question comes from Karen. Karen, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Karen Holmes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Go ahead with your question.
my question has to do with unemployment benefits. If we've switched jobs and we from New Jersey to Pennsylvania and we're in a job for 2 months before the furlough occurs, we found that we're not eligible for unemployment. And I wanted to know if that was happening to so many people when the furlough is ordered. That seems like a glitch in a system to help.
So, Karen, from what you've told me, that should not be the case, because we created rules that were much more flexible than the usual unemployment compensation rules. So who said you weren't eligible?
So this is, I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter who took a job in Pennsylvania from one college to another and found in her that she was they told her in Pennsylvania she was ineligible because she had been on the job for 2 months. That was her notification.
Okay. That's a bit weird. I would, well,
I'm glad to hear that.
if she lived, again, I'm not certain because I'd need to know like the precise details. If she lived in our district,
She lives in our district.
but works in Pennsylvania, so it would be under their system.
Right.
Reach out to our team afterwards. A lot of these individual questions, like we want to kind of speak to people one-on-one and see if we can help.
I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
And it may be in your case that we would refer her to the member of Congress where she's working, because it's the Pennsylvania unemployment system.
Okay.
But do reach out and we'll see what we can do.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Sure.
And Karen, I'll make sure I follow up with the message and so you can have an email for someone on our team to contact, okay?
Thank you so much.
Of course. Our next question comes from Glenn. Glenn, can you hear us? Do you hear us, Glenn?
I think.
Glenn?
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Glenn?
Hold on. I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Figured it out. I can fly airplanes, but I can't figure this stuff out. Okay. Okay. So I had met you in person before, and we talked about this, and I did ask you this question before. And I run a finance company, so I have a lot of constituents that are pilots of and clients of mine that are constituents of yours. And a lot of them continue to ask me this question, so I'm going to ask you again. The SALT considerations, I know that you were trying to attach it to the stimulus packages that have been going through Congress. So I'm just wondering, I know there's been a few other ones, and I'm just wondering, where that is, because that certainly would help.
Yeah, the SALT, state and local tax deduction, the SALT, which we're all frustrated about. Absolutely. I got a standalone, or I helped get a standalone bill passed in the House in December to fully restore the SALT deduction. It went over to the Senate, and no surprise, not any action has been taken there. But at least we got it through the House. That's important. I have been pushing to get it into one of our coronavirus bills, because I do think it's a good way to get relief to people, even if we just do it for 1 year and just link it to the current crisis. A bunch of us, particularly Northeast, bipartisan, have written the leadership urging that be done. Speaker Pelosi at one point said that she was inclined to do it in one of the bills, but I don't know what's going to happen. I hope so. I've reminded her several times. We have enormous amounts of things to accomplish in these bills, as you know, but I'm convinced that this would be a really, really good way to get help to people, particularly in our state.
Okay, thanks. And there is a sunset on that too, from what I understand.
A sunset in what?
Sunset clause on the SALT.
Well, it's yes, that's true. There is, and there was an effort in 2018 by Congress to make it permanent, but that did not succeed. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Susan. Susan, can you hear us? Susan Grant?
Yes. I wanted to go back to, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to go back to the testing for a minute. I don't know if you can explain this, but I'm having trouble understanding how testing people to see if they're infected in large numbers will really help keep us safer, considering that, 2 days later you might be infected. It's such a point in time.
yeah, it's a fair question. It's all about managing risk. There's no perfect system. Now, at some point, we stress may, be able to get effective immunity testing. And we're uncertain about that because it's a new disease. We still don't know perfectly how it works. If you get it, the experts assume that you will have some immunity, but they're not certain. They don't know how long the immunity lasts. Does this behave like the ordinary flu where it mutates every year and you have to get the immunity reestablished? We just don't know those things. But at some point, that could be an answer, that we have an effective immunity test. We're not there yet. So what we're left with are diagnostic tests, which tell you, are you carrying and shedding the virus right now? And as you say, it's not perfect. But if we have truly widespread testing, part of the protocol, I assume, is going to be that people will be expected to be tested pretty regularly. And it could be up to your business. It could be a decision made by a school or university. So long as testing is easy, widely available, and free, then it's something that we can do. We'll just adjust to it. And for the period between that point and when there's a vaccine widely available, that's just what we're going to have to do. And it won't be perfect. There will still be cases cropping up, but it will be manageable enough, I hope, to justify, from a safety, public health point of view, reopening the economy.
Thank you, Tom. Our next question comes from Aaron. Aaron, can you hear us? All right. All right, our next question comes from Casey. Casey, can you hear us? Casey?
I think I see Casey's question there, DeAndre, and I think I answered it. It's on minimizing partisanship.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was, I think, the first question. So I think I covered that.
All right, we'll move on to our next question. Matt, can you hear us? Matt from White House Station, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So first and foremost, how have you been doing personally throughout this craziness?
Oh, well, thank you for asking, Matt. I'm okay. I'm healthy. Thank goodness. My family is healthy. I need a haircut desperately, but
join the club.
That's the last thing I'm going to seriously complain about. I've been working really hard from home, but there are some nice aspects of being at home, and I'm fortunate enough to live in beautiful Hunterdon County, where my workday today was interrupted by a family of 4 baby foxes in my backyard.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know, I'm okay. I'm worried about all of this and what's happening, and of course we've all at this point been touched. We all at least know somebody um, who has passed away or been severely affected, and that
Mhm.
weighs on me. But I'm doing okay.
All right. And where do things stand as far as more relief going to citizens? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree that a one-time payment of $1,200 just isn't enough. And so I've seen some reports that, Andrew Yang was contacted by the administration early on to talk about UBI.
Mhm.
Last week, I saw a report that some health officials, the Bush, Obama, and Trump administrations, were talking about some kind of plan where they would give Americans $50 a day to stay at home like they would with jury duty. Is there any sort of talk about that in Congress? It doesn't have to be, 1,000 or 1,500 a month, but just something more to try to relieve the economic stress that is being placed on a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
Also, where do things stand on like a national vote by mail, or at least giving states money so that they can facilitate vote by mail in November and also in the primaries?
Got it. So yeah, there is talk about more relief, and it could be in the form of another payment to individuals. We haven't decided on that, and we may put something in the House bill, and then we're going to have to negotiate with the president and with the Senate. So I don't know what will happen, but it's definitely part of the conversation. And then also extending potentially the duration of the unemployment. And I don't think we're done with small business relief either, although there are differing ideas. Some people will argue that we should just extend the current PPP loan program. There are some more creative ideas about doing what a lot of the European countries did, I think, to great effect, just basically using the IRS to guarantee a paycheck for small businesses that demonstrate that they indeed are losing money because of the crisis. So it would be a little bit more limited in who would qualify, a little bit more strict, but also much simpler in using the existing IRS system to get money directly to people. So all those things are going to be in the conversation, and what comes out depends not just on me and the House of Representatives, but on what we can get through the Senate and the
Mhm.
President. So we'll see, but I appreciate your input. On voting, I've tried really hard to get something in the CARES Act. I led a letter with several dozen of my colleagues in the House urging that we have a vote by mail mandate with money for states to help them make that transition. And by vote by mail mandate, I don't mean everyone has to vote by mail, but just that everybody has the ability to if they choose. And look, then we saw the election in Wisconsin, and we don't ever want that to happen again in America. To force Americans to have to choose between their right to vote and their right to life is just unconscionable.
Mhm.
And if this,
People got sick there.
yeah,
I've heard.
and we don't know where we're going to be in November, but if there's another outbreak anywhere in the country, it cannot be a factor for people who want to vote. And the best protection is allowing vote by mail. So we're going to put that in the bill that we do in the House, and subject to the same qualification. We're then going to have to negotiate, and we're going to need a lot of Americans to be ringing the phones of their senators and saying, this is not partisan, this is not about helping one side or the other, it's just about helping people who want to vote safely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your responses.
Thank you both. The next question I will read for you, Tom. Any idea of when rapid testing results will be a lot faster? Can we get an update? And exactly when and how can we improve that? People are currently waiting a week to 10 days for test results. and aren't staying home, and this seems ineffective.
Yeah, that's also a really important factor. You know, when I was talking about that moment when we have widespread testing so that people can know, is it safe to go back to work or school, one of the preconditions is that you be able to get your test results back rapidly. I think we're doing a lot better than 7 to 10 days in most places in New Jersey. I think the Somerset Hunterdon site, you're going to get the result back in, I think, up to 3 days. Some of the sites, it's a day and a half or so, which is pretty good, but still we can do better. This is all just about taking a system that was invented 2 months ago and continuing to make it better. I think it would help a great deal if the federal government nationalized the system. The president has the power through the Defense Production Act to do that. That would also help in pushing companies to develop more rapid tests and the drugs and chemicals that are needed to make those tests work. I also think that when we move from just testing symptomatic people to allowing almost anybody to get a test, that creates demand in the marketplace that will produce more rapid tests as well. I hope that at least partly answers your question. It's an extremely important question, though, because we can't achieve the goal we want if we don't fix that.
Thank you, Tom. Just a reminder for everyone on the call, I know we're getting towards the end of our conversation today. Please, if you do have any last minute questions or any questions that are just on your mind right now, please go ahead and submit it in the Q&A feature. And please include your name, the town you're from, a phone number, and an email, so our staff can follow up after the call to get you the answers that you need. Tom, our next question is in regards to the next stimulus. Can working Americans see another round of checks or another financial package that will help them benefit like the one we previously saw?
Yeah, I think I pretty much addressed that a couple of questions ago. I don't know for sure what will happen because this is all to be negotiated, but I think there's at least a strong possibility of additional stimulus checks, of additional funding to help small businesses retain their employees, either through the existing program or something new and improved, and also extending the duration of the coronavirus-related unemployment benefits program. So that's what we're working on. And then there are other things like, childcare, which I'm increasingly concerned about. We're seeing that a lot of summer programs for kids are not happening because of all of this. And we certainly do hope the parents are able to go back to work in the summer. That creates a problem that we're going to have to try to work together to solve.
Thank you, Tom. And our last question before I kick it back over to you, Tom, for closing remarks is in regards to oversight. President Trump has fired the IG. What can Congress do, or how can Congress hold the president and the administration accountable for how the money is used in regards to coronavirus stimulus packages and different responses in that manner?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about this. We have given the administration a tremendous amount of money to spend for the benefit of the American people. And whether you like the president or not, any administration, there are always abuses, there are always inefficiencies. There has to be oversight if we're going to make sure that this money gets mostly to the people who need it. And so I do worry about the president pretty systematically trying to get rid of inspectors general at the different departments. These are the independent officials who serve through multiple administrations, whose job is to root out corruption, to address whistleblower complaints in an appropriate way. If we don't have that, then here's what we fall back on. The House of Representatives has created a select oversight committee, which is operating and meeting as we speak. There will be hearings in the coming week. We already have a couple of whistleblowers who I believe will be testifying before that committee next week. There's also created by the CARES Act an oversight panel that is supposed to police how the aid that we approved for larger businesses is supposed to be run. And that is basically 5 people, a couple appointed by the Republican leadership, a couple appointed by the Democratic leadership in Congress, and 1 person who Speaker Pelosi and Leader McConnell are supposed to agree on. And they are talking about their joint selection now. I know they've had several conversations in the last couple of days, and we all hope that they make that final appointment so that that oversight body can begin to work.
Thank you, Tom. Before I kick it back over to you really quickly for closing remarks, I did send out a link to the Congressman's upcoming events. Please make sure you take a look at that page. We do have a few more virtual events that will be taking place over the next few weeks. So please definitely sign up, and we look forward to seeing you on our next virtual event. Kick it over to you, Tom, for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been a great discussion. I think we got to most of the questions. If there are any questions we didn't get to, and you submitted them in the Q&A, we'll try to get back to folks if you leave your contact info. And of course, and especially the same goes for anybody who needs any special help or assistance from my team with regard to all of these government programs. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you or somebody you know in the district needs that kind of help. This is tough stuff, but as I said at the outset, I think we've made a lot of progress. A lot of people have sacrificed a great deal for the sake of our community and our country, and the results are plain to see. And I think ultimately will be seen as very, very positive. So let's keep this up. Please, everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and stay in touch with me and my team. I look forward so much to having a chance to do this live as soon as we're able to meet in person again. With that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you again.